The story begins on a quiet evening in the home of Clyde Shelton, a brilliant engineer living a peaceful life with his wife and young daughter. While finishing some work, his daughter proudly shows him a necklace she made for her mother. Smiling, Clyde shows her the bracelet she once made for him, cherishing the simple moment they share. Moments later, his wife calls from downstairs, asking him to answer the front door. The instant Clyde opens it, a baseball bat crashes into his head, leaving him dazed and defenseless. Two ruthless criminals, Clarence Darby and Rupert Ames, force their way inside, tie him up, and make him watch as they brutally murder his wife and daughter before his eyes. Clyde survives the attack, but the unimaginable tragedy leaves him scarred forever, turning the loving family man into someone who will never see justice the same way again. The case goes to court, where Assistant District Attorney Nick Rice is assigned to handle Clyde's case. Back at the district attorney's office, Nick discusses the case with his mentor, Jonas Cantrell. Nick believes accepting a plea deal is the safest way to secure a conviction, while Jonas strongly disagrees with his decision. Clyde patiently waits for Nick and hands him additional statements he believes could strengthen their case. But according to Nick, the evidence is too shaky, and with so many flaws, they could end up losing the trial. Clyde strongly objects, but Nick has already accepted Darby's deal. In exchange for testifying against Ames, Darby receives a lighter sentence, while Ames is given the death penalty. Nick's priority is winning the case at any cost and protecting his nearly perfect conviction record. Even if it means making an unfair deal, he chooses the certainty of a conviction over true justice. The hearing begins with Judge Laura Birch presiding over the case. The plea agreement between Nick and Darby is officially approved. Alongside defense attorney Bill Reynolds, Darby signs the deal, pleads guilty, and agrees to testify against Ames, who is sentenced to death. As Nick and Darby shake hands, Clyde watches from a distance, overwhelmed with anger and disbelief. To him, the deal is nothing less than a betrayal. Disappointed that justice has been traded for convenience, he quietly turns and walks away, carrying a resentment that will never fade. 10 years later, Nick Rice has become one of Philadelphia's most successful prosecutors, balancing a prestigious career with family life as his daughter eagerly hopes he'll attend her piano recital. Instead, Nick and his trusted legal associate Sarah Lowell travel to a maximum security prison to witness Rupert Ames' execution. What should have been a quick and painless lethal injection turns into a nightmare as Ames convulses in agony before dying a horrific death. Investigators soon discover the execution equipment had been tampered with, including an infusion canister engraved with the words, "Can't fight fate." The phrase immediately reminds Nick of Clarence Darby, who spoke those exact words years earlier after accepting his plea deal. Realizing the connection can't be a coincidence, Nick turns his attention to the only surviving man from the original case. The police conclude that Clarence Darby sabotaged Ames's execution. Detective Dunnigan and Nick quickly track down his location. But before they arrive, Darby receives a call from an unknown man warning him that the police are coming. Following the caller's instructions, he escapes through the rooftop and heads behind the building where a police cruiser is waiting. The caller tells him the officer inside has already been tranquilized. Darby wakes the unconscious officer, points a gun at him, and orders him to drive. The ride ends at an abandoned warehouse, where Darby points a gun at the officer's head. But before he can pull the trigger, the officer reveals himself to be Clyde Shelton. At the same time, the poison coating the gun takes effect, leaving Darby paralyzed while still able to feel pain. Clyde ties Darby to a table and begins his long-awaited revenge. He injects him with a paralytic to keep him conscious and adrenaline to keep him alive, then places a mirror above him with a photo of his wife and daughter, forcing Darby to witness his punishment beneath the faces of the family he destroyed. Finally, Clyde brutally tortures him piece by piece while recording every moment. The next day, Nick and Sarah discuss the murders of Ames and Darby. Darby's death was an act of brutal violence, but Ames's execution required intelligence and careful planning. Whoever is behind it seems capable of both. Meanwhile, police discover Darby's body, cut into 25 pieces and hidden inside one of Clyde's warehouses. With the strongest motive to kill both men, Clyde immediately becomes the prime suspect. While at his home, Clyde calmly goes about his day, already aware of what's coming. He removes his clothes and quietly waits as a SWAT team storms the property. When they finally enter, Clyde offers no resistance and is taken into custody without a fight. As Clyde is arrested, Nick and Detective Dunnigan search the house for evidence linking him to the murders. But instead of weapons or incriminating clues, they find law books and an old newspaper featuring a photo of Nick and Darby, a silent reminder of the plea deal that changed everything. Clyde is taken into custody for questioning. At first, he remains completely silent, refusing to speak or even ask for a lawyer. Hoping to earn his trust, Nick turns off the recording equipment and questions him privately. Clyde calmly answers every question, leading Nick to believe he has secured a confession. But just as Nick is about to leave, Clyde stops him. His tone suddenly changes. Confident and in complete control, Clyde tells Nick to cancel all of his appointments. He reminds Nick that nothing he said is an actual confession and effortlessly dismantles the case by using the law itself. Then, with a mocking smile, Clyde offers Nick a deal, just like the one he once offered Darby. In exchange for his confession, he demands nothing more than a comfortable bed. Nick immediately rejects the offer, refusing to negotiate with a murderer. However, Nick eventually gives in. Believing it could finally lead to Clyde's confession, he agrees to the deal and has the comfortable bed delivered to his cell that very same day. The following day, Clyde is brought to court for his arraignment. Believing he's too dangerous to release, Nick argues that bail should be denied. But Clyde calmly represents himself, cites the law, and effortlessly dismantles Nick's argument, leaving the courtroom stunned. The same judge who approved Darby's plea deal years earlier decides to grant Clyde bail. Instead of accepting the ruling, Clyde sarcastically applauds and mocks the court, proving how easily people can be manipulated. His outburst quickly gets him thrown out of the courtroom. After the hearing, Clyde begins confessing everything. He calmly reveals how he sabotaged Ames's execution and brutally tortured Darby. Satisfied with the confession, Nick prepares to leave, believing he finally has the evidence he needs. But Clyde isn't finished. He offers another confession, on one condition. He demands a specific steak from a particular restaurant, delivered to his cell at exactly noon. Nick refuses to play along and walks away, until Clyde casually mentions the name of Darby's former attorney, Bill Reynolds. Alarmed, Nick immediately tracks down Bill's wife, who reveals he has been missing for 3 days. Realizing Clyde isn't bluffing, Nick rushes to fulfill the request. But due to a delay from prison security, the meal arrives minutes late. Clyde mocks their failure, then finally reveals Bill's location, warning them they'd better hurry. Nick and Dunnigan race to the coordinates, but when they arrive, they find Bill buried inside a wooden box, already dead. They soon discover that his oxygen supply had been rigged to shut off at exactly 1:15 p.m. Had they delivered Clyde's meal on time, they could have reached Bill before the oxygen ran out. Meanwhile, back in prison, Clyde calmly enjoys his steak while listening to music on his iPod. He even offers some food to his cellmate before suddenly attacking him with a sharpened steak bone. Moments later, Clyde quietly lies back on his bed, as if nothing had happened. After the assault, he is transferred to solitary confinement in a maximum security prison, where the authorities believe they have finally contained him. Still searching for answers, Jonas introduces Nick to a man whose background gives him a very different perspective on Clyde Shelton. The former intelligence operative explains that Clyde was never an ordinary engineer. For years, he operated in the shadows as one of the government's most effective covert specialists, a strategist capable of carrying out impossibly complex missions with almost no physical trace. Before leaving, he offers one final piece of advice. The only guaranteed way to stop Clyde is to kill him. Taking the warning seriously, Nick immediately moves to protect everyone connected to the original case. He orders Detective Dunnigan to place officers around his home while telling Sarah Lowell to leave town for her own safety. At the same time, he and Jonas meet with Judge Laura Birch to request tighter restrictions on Clyde's prison privileges, hoping to eliminate any possibility that he is communicating with an accomplice outside the prison walls. The judge approves the request, believing the additional security measures will finally give law enforcement the upper hand. As the meeting comes to an end, Judge Birch answers a ringing cell phone sitting on her desk. The instant she lifts it to her ear, the device explodes with devastating force, killing her instantly in front of Nick and Jonas. The assassination leaves everyone stunned. Clyde has been locked inside solitary confinement the entire time, yet another carefully planned murder has unfolded exactly as he intended. Convinced that someone on the outside must be helping him, Nick storms back to the prison and confronts Clyde in a fit of anger. Clyde remains completely unfazed. He insists this has never been about simple revenge. His goal is to expose a justice system that rewards convenience instead of integrity. And every death is another step toward forcing people to see its flaws. Before Nick can leave, Clyde presents him with one final ultimatum. If all charges against him aren't dropped, and he isn't released before 6 o'clock the following morning, everyone involved in the case will die. The hours pass with everyone trapped inside the prison, convinced Clyde's deadline will trigger another attack at exactly 6 o'clock. Officers remain on edge, investigators refuse to leave their posts, and every ticking second only adds to the tension. Yet when the appointed time finally arrives, nothing happens. The silence is almost unsettling. After waiting several more minutes, relief begins to spread throughout the room. Believing Clyde's threat has failed, Nick allows everyone to head home for a few hours before returning to continue the investigation. As officers and prosecutors leave the prison, one car suddenly explodes, triggering a devastating chain reaction across the parking lot. Panic erupts as people scramble to escape. Trapped inside her vehicle, Sarah Lowell is unable to get out before another explosion engulfs her car, killing her instantly. At Sarah's funeral, Nick finally admits to Jonas that he lost his way. The pursuit of justice had been replaced by an obsession with protecting his conviction record. Jonas encourages him to become the prosecutor he once aspired to be. But moments later, as Jonas leaves under heavy police escort, an electromagnetic pulse disables the convoy. Isolated from the others, his vehicle is ripped apart by a hidden automated gun before a missile crashes into the wreckage, killing him instantly. Jonas' death leaves the city in shock, especially the mayor, who considered him both a trusted colleague and a close friend. Overcome with guilt, Nick offers his resignation, but the mayor instead appoints him as interim district attorney and entrusts him with stopping Clyde. Determined to take the offensive, Nick reviews Sarah's unfinished investigation and discovers a suspicious warehouse purchase located just outside the prison. Sensing it holds the key to Clyde's plan, he and Detective Dunnigan rush to the property, unaware they're about to uncover the secret that has allowed Clyde to stay one step ahead all along. The warehouse appears abandoned, with nothing but dust and darkness inside. But Nick spots a parked car he recognizes from the day Clyde was arrested, convincing him they're finally onto something. As he and Detective Dunnigan search the building, they uncover a hidden hatch beneath the car, leading to an elaborate underground tunnel network filled with surveillance equipment, weapons, and tools. Nick finally realizes how Clyde carried out every murder while supposedly locked in solitary confinement. He had been slipping through the secret passage, committing the attacks, and returning to his cell before anyone noticed. Following the tunnel to its end, Nick discovers a concealed entrance leading directly into Clyde's cell. But when they quietly open the door, the cell is empty. At that very moment, Clyde is already disguised as a maintenance worker, calmly walking through City Hall unnoticed. Blending in with the staff, he enters a restricted room beneath the council chamber and plants a powerful napalm bomb directly beneath the conference room where the city's top officials, including the mayor, are about to gather. Back inside the tunnel, Nick continues searching Clyde's underground command center until he notices surveillance feeds monitoring City Hall, along with a detailed schedule of the officials' meeting. Everything suddenly falls into place. Realizing Clyde's true objective, he and Dunnigan race towards City Hall while alerting the authorities. Bomb technicians quickly locate the explosive hidden beneath the conference room floor, confirming that it's powerful enough to incinerate the entire chamber and everyone inside. As panic begins to spread, Dunnigan prepares to order an immediate evacuation. After piecing everything together, Nick realizes Clyde is almost certainly watching through his surveillance system. If the officials evacuate, Clyde will know his plan has been exposed and detonate the bomb immediately. Instead, Nick orders the meeting to continue as if nothing is wrong, hoping Clyde will believe everything is unfolding according to plan. Confident that his final lesson is moments away, Clyde returns through the tunnel and slips back into his cell, only to find Nick waiting for him. Clyde insists his actions were necessary to expose a justice system built on compromise, but Nick finally understands the lesson Clyde has been trying to teach. Justice may be flawed, Yet revenge only creates more innocent victims. When Clyde offers him one last deal, Nick refuses, declaring he no longer makes deals with murderers. Certain he has already won, Clyde activates the bomb, but nothing happens. He soon realizes Nick and Dunnigan secretly moved the bomb into his own cell while he was away. As the timer begins counting down, Dunnigan seals the tunnel entrance, leaving Clyde trapped inside with a weapon he built himself. For the first time since his campaign began, there is no carefully planned escape waiting for him. Clyde quietly accepts his fate. Holding the bracelet his daughter once made for him, he sits on his bed as the bomb explodes. A massive explosion tears through the solitary cell, killing Clyde instantly and bringing his reign of terror to an end. With Clyde Shelton gone, the city is finally free from his reign of terror. As the dust settles, Nick and his wife watch their daughter perform at her piano recital, bringing the story to a quiet close.